Hello, everybody, and welcome to this introduction to German New Medicine. My name is Freya Kellett, and if you have made it here to my little corner of the internet, it's very likely you have something going on in your body or in someone's body that you love that you would really like to be on the other side of. Something painful, something gross, something energy sapping, something interfering with your life, keeping you up at night, making you freak out about your future. Or maybe it's something more simple, like the cold you had last weekend or the rash that your kids had for the last 6 weeks. Whatever it is that you're here to solve, we're going to start somewhere really simple. And that's that the way that you and me and everybody else has been taught to think about their symptoms is that there's something going wrong, right? Something to get rid of, something to fix. And German New Medicine starts from a completely different premise. And that premise is that symptoms are not the problem. They're actually part of the solution. And I know, okay, your brain doesn't immediately hear that and go like, well, duh, like obviously, how did I not think of that before? It's so clear. It goes like, what about cancer? And how is vomiting for 3 days helpful? How are you meant to, look at a 3-year-old hallucinating with a fever at 3 a.m. in the morning and see anything other than something going really, really wrong, right? I'm not new to the human experience. I know that rashes and fevers and exhaustion and pain and spending 2 hours chained to the toilet, none of these things feel like solutions. And a lot of the time, they don't appear to make sense. They come out of nowhere, they interrupt your life, you don't know why they're happening, what it means, when the symptom's gonna go. And that feeling of not knowing what the heck is going on is probably why you're here. I have been there in the pain, in the panic, in the why me. And for me, my chronic health issues did not shift because I found the right thing to do, because I found the right diet or the right toxin to cut out. For me, it came from questioning something much more basic, something I did not even realize I was assuming. And that is that if something hurts, it must be bad. If something's uncomfortable, it must be a mistake. If something is coming out of my body, growing somewhere unusual, getting in the way of my life, it's definitely a problem, right? This is what I thought. And then German New Medicine made me ask something totally new, and that is, what if my symptoms are a good thing? What if they're actually part of a positive process? Now, let's step back from a second from the kind of flowery idea and into something you already know, okay? And that's that if you look at nature, something changes and something responds. When there's a problem, a predator, a drought, a sudden change of some kind, life does not break down. It reorganizes, it does something. A forest doesn't panic when conditions shift, it just responds. The soil adjusts, plants grow differently, animals move, adapt, survive. And sometimes it definitely doesn't always look gentle. It doesn't look like a beautiful flower blooming, right? It can look like a wildfire, or a flood, or a predator ripping apart another animal, or that funky mold that's growing on the compost pile in your backyard. And from the outside, these things can look destructive. It can look like something's going wrong, but you know that they're part of a larger process, yeah, of life continuing to live. It doesn't feel random. It feels patterned. It feels logical. Even if you don't understand every intricate detail, you still trust, right? This is in service to life continuing in some way. There is a system that is reorganizing things, responding, adjusting, keeping life going. And then it comes to your own body. And very often that assumption, that just knowing, that trust disappears, right? Now it's not part of this, beautiful natural design. It's, why is this happening? This came out of nowhere. This doesn't make sense. And then, of course, the fear comes in, because when you can't see what something is a part of, when you don't understand it, when it feels random, it feels dangerous. But the question today is, what if this fear is not actually evidence that there is something going wrong, but just evidence of a misunderstanding? Because what's interesting is you have a lot of trust in your body, more than you think, probably. If something gets in your eye, it waters. If you inhale dust, you cough. If you eat something kind of funky, you vomit. If you get injured, it gets red and inflamed and it begins to heal. And all of these processes can be uncomfortable, they can be intense, they're completely outside of your control. Very similar, really, to what we would label as a symptom in other scenarios. But we do not experience these processes in our body as scary. Why? Because they make sense to you, right? You can see exactly what the cause was, you understand what they're doing, and so you trust them. You don't really give them a second thought most of the time. But then something else happens, right? Some other thing in the body that you don't understand. So you don't have that grounding, safe feeling, that comfort of understanding that really kind of orients you to the process. And so you label it as a symptom. But what if a symptom is just one visible piece of a much bigger process that up until now you haven't been able to see? What if the body isn't sometimes intelligent and doing everything it can to keep you alive, and then sometimes failing and out to get you? What if it's always doing the same thing? That is responding to something that matters in a way that helps you deal with a situation. What if every symptom is a response, an answer, an adjustment for you in the face of some kind of threat, right? The watering eye is the endpoint, it's the reaction to getting something stuck in the eye. The scab is not the beginning, it's the body's answer to a cut. The vomiting is a solution to the problem of having eaten something kind of off. What if the difference between the symptoms that freak you out and the scab that you don't give a second thought is not actually the process, but your understanding, right? That's what GNM says. It says that symptoms are not the starting point, they are the end point. And this isn't just an idea, it's something you can actually observe. It's already happened thousands of times in your own body. There is a sequence, right? And the sequence is that there is a problem, followed by a solution, followed by a symptom. Basically, something happens, something that goes unresolved, something that really matters, something that your attention keeps going back to. And during that time of this little drama, you're functioning, right? But you're not quite at ease. Your mind is kind of always being pulled back to this thing, this rumination. And then something shifts, the situation resolves, or it changes, or it settles. For some reason, you move on. You can let it go. And after you've let it go, that's when the physical symptom appears, right? We all know this. People get sick after exams, after big deadlines, at the start of a holiday, after a stressful period at work. When this happens to us, it can feel almost insulting, right? It's like, why now? Like, I just got through the hard part and now my body is falling apart. And you've probably even said to yourself, right? Like, it's because I've been run down. I pushed myself too hard. My body's catching up with me. That's the explanation that most of us have been given, that stress has caused a breakdown in the body. But if you look more closely at the timing, it doesn't quite add up because the symptoms are not coming at the peak of stress, they're coming after things calm down, after you relax, after you stop thinking about the stress. And so this raises another question, which is what if you're not watching a breakdown, but something completing? What if symptoms are not happening because you pushed yourself too hard, but because something just finished, some kind of process in the body, and your body is actually totally fine and intelligent and in control, even when it looks like a symptom? So you might be wondering, like, why am I so fixated on the timing of symptoms? Like, timing doesn't really matter in Western medicine. It doesn't really matter in alternative medicine either. But in German medicine, it's actually one of the most important details about a symptom. It's the window into understanding the symptom's purpose in the bigger picture of your life, right? The timing detail tells us so much about the specific stress that your body is responding to, okay? Because whatever has happened in the minutes, hours, days prior to the symptom is not separate. It's a part of the same sequence, okay? And once you start to see it that way, symptoms begin to feel purposeful. They're not so random anymore. They're part of this bigger story, connected to something that just finished, to a process of adaptation that's no different than a scab, watering eye, a sneeze in response to dust. Yeah? So, of course, it's not just the specific timing that matters, it's also the specific type of symptom. Because if we're playing along with this idea that the body is responding to some kind of specific stress, it wouldn't make sense for the response to be random. It would have to match the nature of what happened. So, if that's true, then different types of experiences, different types of stress would lead to different kinds of symptoms. And not in a vague way, but in a very structured, very specific way. We have to ask, why this symptom? Why the gut and not the skin? Why the skin and not the heart? Why is there a hearing issue and not a vision issue? Well, it's because the solution to getting something in the eye isn't to develop a wart on your big toe. The solution to getting dust in your lungs isn't to develop an ear infection. The solution to getting a cut or a wound isn't to have diarrhea, right? The answer to why this symptom is related to the function of that specific part of the body. The response fits the problem. The response is a very precise answer. The response is a very precise answer to the specific problem. And the way that the body responds, the way the body answers, the way the body tries to help us when we're in some kind of threat or drama in our life is by actually changing how particular tissues and systems behave, depending on what the situation is, what the threat is, what the new circumstance is, what the danger is, what the survival issue is about, and how it was perceived by you. Okay? So, if the situation is about not having enough that you want, something you need, something you can't quite get, the part of the body responsible for taking things in is the part of the body that is going to respond, to change, to adapt for you. So in this case, it would be the intestine, okay? Because the intestine has a clear biological function. It's to absorb, it's to take in the nutrients that have been broken down higher up in the digestive tract and to actually take it in and turn it into your body, And so what's the core problem here? Well, it's not having enough. It's hunger. It's scarcity, okay? It's I'm never full. And during this phase, the digestive system responds with increased absorption capacity, right? It basically increases the surface area of digestive tissue so that you can make the most of what you have, right? This makes sense. It's logical. And then the situation resolves. There is some kind of solution, there's some kind of feast on whatever it is that you want. And you no longer need this extra absorptive capacity. And now your body shifts and you get diarrhea. And the diarrhea is not a bad thing. It's not a sign of something going wrong. It's just a sign that a process has completed in the body because it's no longer necessary, because the issue of I want, I'm hungry, I need more, that issue has been put to bed. Okay? Now, as humans, we don't just experience this feeling of hunger and lack with food. We can experience it with money or love or recognition or connection or wanting a baby, for example. And this isn't kind of like a woo-woo out there thing. It's actually just a very practical link between the mind and the body, between what we perceive as survival threats. Doesn't matter if they actually are, okay? It's just about our perception. And then the toolkit of adaptations that your body has on hand to help you out. Because remember, the whole point of all of this is to keep you alive. That's the point here. Life is always adapting with the goal of survival. Okay, another example is the bladder. So what does the bladder do? It holds urine, and the purpose of urine in nature is very specific, okay? It's to mark a territory. It's to say, this space is mine, and I'm gonna make it smell like me to remind people of who I am and what I'm about. You see this all of the time with your pets, okay? So what could be a threat here? What could be the specific issue that would cause the bladder to change in some way? Well, some kind of territorial issue where there's someone new in the territory, someone peeing over my pee, someone covering my smell with theirs, someone interfering with what I had marked out for myself. okay? And so when this kind of issue is going on, this territorial marking, the bladder will adapt with more capacity, okay, by ulcerating the bladder to create more space for urine, because more pee means more ability to mark the territory, right? More ability to communicate with the world that this is my space. And then when the issue resolves, well, that's when a symptom appears, and the symptom is a UTI, okay? Now, obviously, as humans, we flush our pee down the toilet, okay? We don't see it as this like biological gold that all the other animals in the world do, but we still have the same biological impulse to mark our territory, whether that's our body or our homes. We don't like our bodies or our things or our space messed up or claimed by other people. So when this happens, when a mother-in-law starts reorganizing all your stuff, or your boyfriend oversteps some kind of boundary during sex, the body will adapt with the bladder. Another example is our sinuses. Our sense of smell is our built-in alarm system, okay? It's our ability to assess for threats that we can't see, because oftentimes we can smell things before we can see them, right? So when we are on edge, when we are searching and scanning for the danger that we can't see, the danger that's not immediately obvious, we're trying to suss out a situation, suss out people or a place for safety, okay? That's when our nose adapts. It actually ulcerates while we are trying to smell things to get information, because with a wider nose, we can take in more smell, more information, more feedback, okay, to know whether or not there is a danger, there is some kind of threat out there. And then when we are safe, when the situation is all good, okay, boom, we go into repair. We have a running nose, okay, but only after we're sure that there's no more danger. So I could give examples all day long, organ by organ, until every symptom in the body is mapped out. This is what German New Medicine offers, this kind of specificity and precision, okay? But this is just a taste today. The point is, though, that no matter the organ, no matter the system in your body, no matter the symptom, it's all the same pattern. There's a challenge, and then there's a specific adaptation to help us in response to that challenge. And then there's a specific type of repair once the issue has come to conclusion. And we get different types of symptoms because we have different types of perceptions, right? We all see the world in a different way. Okay, so at this point, you're either, ready to run the other way and you think I'm a crazy person, or some of this is landing for you. And if that's the case, even just a little, then the thing that I hope you're leaving with is that your symptoms may not be random. They might not be proof that something is going wrong and your body is failing you. They might just be part of a very practical process that actually makes sense. Not in a woo-woo, like everything happens for a reason kind of a way, just in a very practical way, that there is a pattern, a sequence, that your body is responding to something real in your life in the only way that it knows how, right? The only thing the body can act upon is itself, okay? So what this means is that chronic issues may not be some mysterious life sentence. They're just chronic patterns, chronic moods, chronic unresolved internal states that your body has been faithfully responding to. And if this is true, then symptoms are not a time to panic. They're just a time to ask a question, to ask what just finished? What just completed? Okay, what is this symptom telling me about the dramas in my life that have come to an end? Okay? And then from there, things can start to shift, not because you force your body to stop, not because you restrict, not because you cut stuff out of your life, but because you start just hearing what your body has been trying to say, right? You just start looking in the right place. You start looking at the drama of your life that each flare up is pointing you directly to. And then you can just make changes where it will actually work, right? And sometimes that change will be practical, sometimes that change will be perceptual. But the point is, when you stop perceiving danger, when you stop perceiving a threat, when there's no longer a survival issue of some kind, remember, not necessarily a real survival issue, but just one that was perceived that way by you, then the body hears you and it knows, okay, I no longer need to adapt anymore. She's got it. okay? And that means for you that your symptom can go away. So I do not expect you to instantly know how to do all of this from one little video, okay? This is just a tiny little intro. But if you're sitting here and you're like, okay, I kind of buy into some of this, some of it seems to make sense, but I still have a lot of questions and I really have no idea how to actually do anything with this, it's all good, okay? It takes a lot of time to get to the point of like actually having a symptom and going, oh, I know what this is responding to. I know what just finished. I know why this is happening. I know what question to ask. That takes time. And it takes hearing lots of stories, lots of case studies. This is how it clicks for people. Okay. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people at this point, and I know that what it takes to really understand this stuff is to hear stories from other people. And that's why I made the German New Medicine Stories podcast, because this stuff, in order for it to work for you, has to go from being an abstract tool or an interesting idea to something you can actually use in real life. And that takes hearing real stories from real people and all kinds of different symptoms. Okay, so if you're curious, that's where I would recommend starting, is with my podcast, the German New Medicine Stories podcast. And then if you reach a point where you're ready for more than that, when you're ready to know exactly what to do step by step to use this stuff in your own life, that's what my course, Sherlock Your Symptoms, is for. Either way, do not just leave this as an interesting idea if you are at all curious, okay? If this lands for you, that for every second of every day, for every moment of your entire life, your body has actually been working for you, that it's been responding to your private inner workings, your private anxieties, your private insecurities, jealousies, annoyances, fears, and changing at a cellular level to try and help you the only way it knows how, then start learning in whatever way makes sense for you, because this information has changed my life and I know that it will change yours too if you give it time.